Sorry that it's a little bit late. Firstly, thank you everyone for coming. I really appreciate the support. A little bit of housekeeping, phones on silent please. If you do want to record, take photos, by all means you can. Feel free to tag me on Instagram so then I can reshare it if you've posted it. My Instagram and blog are up there. Sorry if it's too small, I have a problem with small handwriting. That sounded like that was a photo being taken already. It makes me nervous. Sorry. No, you're good. Toilets there. Everyone, hopefully you've got a first complimentary drink. So that's just to make you feel a little bit more comfortable. Basically, the whole intention of this story, because that's basically what this is storytelling, is it's not intended to be sort of a sob story or an inspirational story of like, oh my god, wow, she went through this and she got through this. That's not the intention. So please, no tears, Jazz. Just joking. It's more intended to basically highlight a need in society and explain why we need to do a better job of looking after the people around us. So I think that's everything that I wanted to start off with. Ever since I went through my really difficult patch in America, I wanted to share my story, and I felt like still being here, I needed to do so. So in 2016, I started a blog, which is a blog up there, and I started writing about my experiences, writing about it in a really raw and real way, so anyone that's read my writing can probably attest to that. But over the years, I realised that I probably haven't reached as many people as I wanted to reach. And I've always wanted to do talks, but was waiting, I guess, for organisations to sort of get on board, and now I've just decided that I'll do it on my own, and hence why I'm here. So this is the first time I'm doing it, hence why I'm wearing black so that you can't see the sweat patches. Call myself out on that. So thank you for being a part of this, and for helping me, I guess, allow the visions to come align. So, getting into it, suicide has been a familiar face for me since a very young age. So probably when I was 13 years old, one of my best friends tried to take her own life. And so she was 11 years old, she was going through some really difficult times. She was in abusive family relationships with stepdad, dad, and whatever else. And I remember her telling me what she did when she was at school and how she tried to end her life. And being 13, I had no idea how to respond to that. But I couldn't do nothing. You know, I wasn't just going to be like, oh yeah, it's all going to be okay. I knew that something serious was obviously up, because you're not 11 years old and consider ending your life if something serious isn't going on. So I remember I went to the school counsellor, and I met with her and I said, look, this is what my friend's going through, how can I help her? Because I didn't have the skills to help her. I thought that she needed to see a therapist because, again, that's sort of what we're told, is that when something serious is going on, they need someone serious to talk to. But I realised that I still needed to be a friend and I still needed to support her in whatever way I could. So I went to the school counsellor, and school counsellor gave me a few tips and tools, sort of generic things, not really sure how much they helped. But I then offered for my friend to come with me to go see a school counsellor, because I didn't want her to go see a counsellor or see a therapist on her own, because that can be really daunting for anyone that has gone to see a therapist. They would probably attest to that as well. And the most important thing was that I guess I showed up with her, and I didn't turn my back on her when she was struggling. I didn't say, oh no, someone else's problem, I'm not qualified to deal with this. I tried to do what I could to be a friend to her and help her through that. Fast forward a couple of years, so 2 years later was probably when I first started to self-harm. And looking back, I probably was self-harming because I was struggling with my sexuality. I felt like no matter how well I did in school or in soccer, there was this part of me that was never good enough. And it was my sexuality, because I guess 10 years ago it wasn't as acceptable as probably what it is now. And a few comments growing up, again 10 years ago, it was, people were I guess more homophobic than probably what they are now. And I internalised a lot of that. So I think it was when I was like 10 years old or something, or 8 years old, and I remember my Oma saying, oh, you know, if any of you kids are gay, I'm going to disown you. Now, that's probably all said in jest, but when you're 8 years old, you absorb everything around you, and so you internalize that as, okay, being gay is wrong. And so I grew up with sort of that mentality of, being gay is wrong. And then at 15, started to have these feelings and attraction towards girls, being like, no, that's wrong, you can't do that, that's wrong. So I internalized all of these feelings, and that's when I started to self-harm, to sort of take care of that emotional baggage that I was going through. And then probably 2 years after that, I went through not really a massively difficult patch in year 12, but the person that I was with broke up with me, my probably first love, and that was really difficult. And I remember it was just before year 12 exams, I was really struggling, and I reached out to my parents and said, like, I'm really struggling, and because mum and dad were like, you're throwing everything away, you've worked so hard, and you're just going to throw it away just before year 12 exams. I'm like, I literally can't help it, I just can't get out of bed. I have no desire to do these things. Booked an appointment with a doctor, booked an appointment with a school counsellor, and I remember it was the school counsellor meeting with her and telling her what I was going through that really helped. And what helped was I mentioned to her that my girlfriend had just broken up with me, and something that when you've got something that you're struggling with, or that there's a certain amount of shame associated with it, you're very acutely aware of how people change their body language with you. And so I remember, she was a religious and education teacher, so I'm thinking she's going to judge me for this, she's going to change her body language in some way. And so I remember saying, my ex-girlfriend, she just broke up with me. And I was waiting for some sort of bodily adjustment, and there was nothing. There was no change in her behaviour, no change in her mannerisms, and in that moment, for the first time, I felt accepted. I felt accepted for my sexuality. I felt like, okay, maybe there isn't something wrong with me. So that was when I was 17. Fast forward another 2 years when I was in college. I had come back from my first ACL, and I was working really hard. I probably overtrained. I definitely overtrained because I was trying to make up for what I'd lost in the 10.5 months of being out with an ACL injury, to the point where I then ended up having a stress fracture in my foot. I played on a stress fracture in my foot, which was extremely agonising, and after that we lost in, I think it was the quarterfinals, and I was just extremely angry and negative and bitter, and I was horrible to be around. My teammates absolutely hated me. I got coined Negative Nancy on the team because everything that came out of my mouth was just fire. I was negative about everything. Everyone was sort of positive about the season, being like, oh yeah, we had a good season or whatever. I'm like, no, we fucking didn't. Like, we lost. What are you saying? I don't understand. We didn't achieve the goal that we set out to achieve. How can you say that we've had a successful season? So I became intolerable, and people didn't want to be around me because I was so negative. And it wasn't until a professor sort of sat me down and said, Nicole, I think that you're depressed. And I said, what do you mean? Like, I'm not sad. That's not depression. And she said, no, depression can show itself in anger as well. So often when we think of depression, we think, it's sadness, it's the hopelessness, but depression can also be an anger, negative energy, and everything like that. So that was when I was 19. And I think something that's important there is that exercise has been shown to alleviate depressive symptoms. That's a pretty common fact. But what do you do when you can't exercise? What do you do when, most of us play soccer here? What do you do when that's your primary identity and then all of a sudden you can't exercise? How then are you supposed to cope? You're now not getting any of the natural chemicals that you get from exercising. So, you've got the dopamine, the oxytocin, the endorphins, the serotonin, feeling valued. You no longer get any of those natural chemicals, and you're completely taken out of that situation. So you go through a drug withdrawal, and it's no wonder that you would then struggle. But what assistance is there sort of in society or growing up that helps those people who are injured? It's sort of like, oh yeah, you'll be fine, you'll be back in a couple of weeks, and actually mentally you're going through a drug withdrawal. So that was when I was 19. Then I guess fast track 2 years. So there's quite a lot that happened during my collegiate years. I felt like I got overlooked many years by the coach with captaincy. Some stuff happened in my third year, which was my junior year, where it was basically a shit show. I won't go into details about it. But coach made some poor decisions. I challenged the coach, and the following year they needed leadership. and they asked me to, step up, and I said, I have sort of been stepping up, but you made it very clear that you didn't see me as a leader, so why would I step up now, sort of thing. But then later in that year, I got in a relationship. So I'd met someone who I hadn't been in a relationship since in Australia. So things were looking good there. She wasn't associated with soccer, so there wasn't the drama associated with that. And then I finally got the captaincy that I'd wanted for the 3 years that I was there, albeit I was captain with 3 other captains. So I think that was the coach's way of saying, hey, you can be captain, but I'm not giving you any say. So things were looking really good. I was in my final semester really of studying, so I was looking forward to graduating, potentially going to graduate school afterwards. I had volunteered as a children's centre that summer, working with kids that had been emotionally, physically, sexually abused. So I was ticking off a few things, everything was aligned. But the relationship that I was in ended up being not the healthiest, in the sense that my partner had lost her mum in March of that year. So she lost her mum to cancer. And so when we got together, she couldn't be there for herself. But that was okay because I was in a healthy state of mind. So during that time, I would be there for her day and night, whatever she needed, whenever she needed it, I was there. She would often stay after work and she would drink late into the night. I would then go at 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning, go pick her up, drive her home, take care of her. And I was able to do that. Then pre-season started for soccer, and that behaviour still sort of repeated itself. I was losing sleep. Something significant happened with my partner, that she was out drinking and she had messaged me and she's like, I'm really not doing well. And I said, okay, where are you? I'm coming to pick you up. And her comment was, so as I'm on my way down at 3 a.m. in the morning, she said, if you come in, you have to have an open mind. And I'm like, I'm not coming in, I'm in my pajamas, like I'm literally picking up and we're going home. And she said, I'm not ready to go home yet. So then I got really angry. I turned the car around, got home, switched my phone off. Next thing I know, wake up to missed calls, messages from her saying that she tried to drive home drunk, she crashed her car, she hit her head. The anxiety that I then felt and the guilt that I felt for having turned off my phone, for being angry, I then experienced that every single time that she would go out. And that anxiety never dissipated until she was home safe. So, when I was on the road for soccer, I would be up Friday nights after our game, talking to her, waiting for her to come home, checking the ADT security to see when the front door was opened. It was very unhealthy. And for those of you that know, sleep is a very important part about staying healthy and not getting injured. So I had a lot of stress going on with my relationship that I wasn't aware of was taking a toll on me. I sprained an ankle probably 5 games in. I was playing I was really in form with soccer, playing centre back, and probably playing at my peak at the time. Then sprained my ankle, didn't think it was a big deal, but took the time to recover from it, because my first ACL I played on an ankle sprain that I shouldn't have played on, tore my ACL. So I wasn't going to take any chances, continued to rehab, and then it was a Friday night when we were on the road, and my best mate at the time, she fainted during the game. And in context, I had known about her history. So when she first moved into the team, I got to talking with her about how she had been institutionalized with an eating disorder for 9 months, that she had struggled with depression and whatever else. And these were things that no one else on the team knew. So on that Friday night, she fainted in the soccer game. She was in and out of consciousness, and I naturally was extremely concerned. No one knew what was going on with her, and so they wanted to take her to the hospital, but she didn't want to go. She literally screamed and said, no, you're not taking me to the hospital. And I then felt like it was my duty to then tell the athletic trainer, hey, I know what's going on with my teammate. I think it's associated with the fact that she has an eating disorder. I don't think she's eating enough. It's hot, it's in the middle of summer. I think that's why she's in and out of consciousness. The next morning, they tried to get her to train. She couldn't get through training. And again, so I'm very concerned about her well-being. And I meet with the other captains and I say, look, I really think that we shouldn't allow her to play tomorrow because she's not in good headspace. You know, it'll be a 1 o'clock game, it's in the middle of summer, it'll be hot, she hasn't eaten, and I really think that we should go to coach and say, look, she can't play. So the captains were all like, oh yeah, we're all with you, we support you, cool, whatever. Go to my coach is like, yep, I don't care about winning, I care more about players, whatever else. And I remember coming out of that meeting being like, oh my God, my coach has finally listened to me. You know, 4 years and he's finally listening to what I have to say. He finally cares about players. I remember messaging my mum, my sports psych, who was my mentor at the time, and they're all like, you know, this is awesome, Nicole, I'm so happy for you. What you're doing for your friend is really amazing. The next day, I'm still injured and she's then starting. And so not only did he start her, but he didn't even tell me that that's what was going to happen. So I remember feeling in that moment extreme anger, betrayal, because I had this hope that, you know, finally he's listening, finally he actually cares about players more than he does winning, which in the previous years he hadn't shown that. And so I sort of, that pushed me over the edge. For that next week, I was extremely apathetic, I was numb. I remember journaling about it, basically just feeling the clinical, I guess, symptoms of depression. And then a week later, I tear my ACL. So I tear my second ACL, and I, to this day, still feel like those two events are linked. Because I think that when you're extremely emotionally stressed and emotionally overwhelmed, that's when you get injured. So did my second ACL, so all my hopes, dreams, expectations of having a really, really good senior season, you know, finishing on my own terms, were taken away from me the minute that I heard my knee pop. But then when our body, when we experience trauma, we shut down. So there's this thing called the psychological immune system where basically anything that's significant, your body kicks in and it stops you from processing that. And so I just became completely numb. And it was fine because I then decided, you know what, I'm going to play without an ACL. I'm going to finish my senior year on my terms. You know, this isn't going to be my last game. So I rehabbed every single day for the next 6 weeks. I was in the gym, strengthening my legs, because I was like, I want to play without an ACL. And I was so giddy. You wouldn't think that you know, that there was anything wrong with me because I just seemed so happy. And the reason I seemed so happy was because I was so numb and I couldn't feel anything. I just didn't care. I started to lose weight, but I was still exercising. So I was still getting that endorphin release. I still had that structure. I still had that routine. Fast forward to the championship grand final, and it's a Sunday afternoon, and we ended up losing. And then I had surgery booked for the Monday at, I think, 6 a.m. So we get back in probably at 2 a.m. in the morning. So then I have a quick little nap, and then I'm off for surgery the next day. So not only then do you not have soccer, but now I can't exercise. So I've got no endorphin releases. And my mum was with me at the time, so she stayed for my surgery, which I was really grateful for, but she left probably a week after, because she obviously had a life back in Australia to go back to. And my sports psych, who was a mentor, who I looked up to, who I wanted to, in essence, start a business with, once I graduated, and we'd spoken about this to amass extensively, and she had told my parents, you know, don't worry about Nicole, I'll look after her, I'll check in with her, and she didn't. My parents reached out to her and she was like, yep, I'll come visit Nicole. She never visited. And I reached out to her numerous times, and she just couldn't make time for me. And the betrayal, not the betrayal, but I was obviously extremely hurt by that. This was someone that I respected a lot, someone that I looked up to, someone that this was in essence her profession, who then, when things got tough for me, turned her back on me, or that's how it felt. She probably had things going on in her life. So someone that I looked up to wasn't there. School wasn't really challenging me. I obviously didn't have soccer. The environment with soccer was very toxic, because everything just reminded me of the fact that, hey, you used to be able to play soccer, but now you can't. And so I couldn't be in that environment. I had to do my rehab off campus because I couldn't possibly be in that environment reminded of everything that I had lost. My teammates didn't really care. I remember when I deactivated social media, instead of them asking, hey, is everything okay, they all turn around being like, why has Nick blocked me? And it's like, it's not all about you. Heaven forbid that I actually might be going through something. Family obviously lived in another country, so they couldn't really be there. I remember reaching out to my brother numerous times, asking to meet on Skype, asking to talk, and I would show up on Skype and he wouldn't be there. And so he was going through his own stuff, now that I know in hindsight. But I just remember feeling so alone, feeling like no one actually cared. Because I'd reached out for help and no one was there. So then I started self-harming again. The self-harming got quite severe. I was putting a lot of stress and pressure on our relationship. And my partner, she would work a double on a Friday, and instead of wanting to come home to me, she would want to stay at work and drink. Which then I perceived that as rejection, that she would rather stay with people that she's worked with all day than come home to me. And with me not having anything else to look forward to in my day other than my cat coming home, crazy cat lady, that's fine, that I would then start getting very anxious, and she was then avoidant, which is not obviously a healthy recipe. Fast forward to Christmas, I was seeing a therapist at this point. My therapist knew that I was self-harming. My therapist wasn't concerned that I was self-harming. I mentioned to my parents on Skype, because I think that's what we used at the time. I said, look, I think I need to start seeing a therapist more often. And they said, oh, why is that? And I said, because I'm really not doing well. And they changed the conversation, which obviously, from their perspective, and I don't know this for a fact, but I'm guessing they didn't know what to do with that. You know, they're in another country, they're not seeing how much I'm struggling, then all of a sudden your child says this and it's like, I don't know what to say, let's just change the conversation. But from my perspective, when someone dismisses that and sort of changes the conversation, you internalize that as they don't care, or I'm too much to deal with. My partner had reached out to them and said, you know, I'm concerned about Nicole, but again, living in another country, there's that massive barrier. 2 days later, I get into an extremely heightened state of emotions, and I had access to my partner's messages, and I was reading the messages that she was sending to a friend that was too busy to catch up with me, but was still contacting my girlfriend. And in that message, my friend had said, I don't even know why Nicole's struggling. She's got absolutely everything. She's got no reason to be upset. I hate attention seekers, and all she's doing this is for attention. And so reading that message was then the trigger for me. And I then called my partner, called her about 10 times because I was like, I'm about to do something stupid. She didn't answer, she didn't contact me. So then I called my friend who was in Norway, and she fortunately did pick up, but it was after I had already been in the process of doing the stupid things. And I was just in this, I was in a state of elation. I was extremely giddy, didn't care, and she said to me to this day that was the scariest thing that she's ever witnessed because of the state of mind that I was in. She then contacted my doctor then contacted my partner then finally came home, was extremely cold towards me and was kind of like, what have you done? And I was like, what do you mean? You know, like, because I was numb, I didn't care. And so basically, I ended up at hospital, ended up being institutionalized. So I spent New Year's that year in an institution. And in America, when you get taken in on a suicide attempt, you have to stay a minimum of 72 hours in an institution. And I remember being so fucking angry when I got to the hospital because I said to everyone, I was like, if people fucking listened to me, I wouldn't be here right now. I asked for help. I told people I wasn't struggling, people didn't know what to do. I told people that I was self-harming, no one saw that as a concern. So then I felt like I had to take it to the next step before anyone could pay me the attention that I needed and get me the help that I needed. So then obviously when I got into the institution, and it was one of those things that you get taken straight to the hospital, you get taken from the hospital to the institution, you don't even get to go home and pack your bag, you get your phone taken away from you, you get strip searched, all of those things. And so I was there for 5 days. And after that, my dad flew over. I can't imagine being a parent getting that phone call. But I also know that people never asked me about the situation. They always perceived it as a suicide attempt. But for me, it wasn't. It was a cry for help. And there's a big distinct difference that suicide attempt if there's intent to actually end your life. Whereas for me, there was no intent to end my life. It was more, hey, I'm really struggling and no one's paying me any attention right now, so let me take it to the next level before someone actually pays me attention. So pay me attention they did. I then started seeing a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist gave me some medication. The day that I started taking the medication, then they ask you to fill out this questionnaire of, do you think the medication's working? And having studied psychology, I'm like, well, no, I know that antidepressants take at least 2 weeks to work, so this is a dumb question. And you're asking basically for the placebo effect. Not sure that they really appreciate that. I then left the institution thinking, yep, that's exactly where I needed to be. I journaled the entire time that I was in there, but I came out of there knowing that wasn't my rock bottom. I knew things that were going to get worse before they got better. And I then had my final semester, but I was only taking 2 classes, so I wasn't really stimulated mentally. Because I completed all my other classes. I was coaching as well at the time. I remember meeting with my professor and saying, hey, look, this is my situation. I was institutionalized over Christmas, probably not in the best headspace. And she was like, yep, right. I would like to meet with you every single week after class. How does that sound? And I said, yep, cool. So every single week I would look forward to these discussions with her. And it was her just checking in, being like, hey, how are things going? And she just listened without judgment. She listened without, without telling me what to do. And there was one particular week where I really wasn't okay. And she said, hey, I'm going to check in with you this weekend. Is that okay? And I said, yeah, of course. Now, most people, when you think about checking in, you're thinking, oh, they're going to ask you, hey, how are you? How's it going? What are you up to, sort of thing. But she knew me to a T, and she knew the type of person that I was. She knew that I craved intellectual stimulation. So the question that she asked me was, hey, so I've been thinking, what skills do you think that a psychology graduate should possess when they graduate with a degree in psychology? And I was like, oh, what a great question. Let me write my answers to that. And so that was her knowing what I needed to distract me from what it was that I was going through. And I will forever be grateful for her because of that. Fast forward a little bit, so I guess 6 weeks after I was institutionalized, and it was February 12th, and so my partner and I, again, things were very toxic. It would go from being fine during the week to then being toxic on the weekend. So it was a very cyclic behavior with her, that she would work on the weekends, and that's when obviously I was alone. That's when I struggled the most. I found her presence as being my safety. Not saying that that's healthy, because it entirely wasn't. I put so much pressure and expectations on her to fulfill all the needs that I wasn't getting in every other aspect of my life, which no human is capable of doing. So on the Thursday, I asked her if she could pick me up from my car appointment, because I need to get my clutch repaired. And then the person that changed the clutch, he wasn't there, so I tried calling her and saying, hey, you don't need to come pick me up. She didn't answer her phone. Tried texting her, she didn't respond. So then as I'm driving home, I see her driving, and I stop my car. I get out of my car and I say, if you answered your phone, you realize you don't need to come pick me up. And so I obviously had a very aggressive tone, because I was frustrated with the fact that she wasn't responding to my messages. She then started avoiding. She shut down because she had a really difficult relationship with her mum. And so then, again, my response was to be anxious, and her response was to be avoidant. So for the rest of the day, she didn't really communicate with me. And again, all I needed was her to come home, and that was my sort of safety. And she told me, I'm not staying at home tonight. And I said, okay. Didn't obviously respond in a calm tone like that. I then went to coaching that night, and after coaching, I went out. I went to Panera Bread, left my phone in the car, and I was trying to just get zen and be namaste. And then I get back to the car and I look at my phone, and there's all these missed calls. There's missed calls from ADT security, there's missed calls from my roommate, there's missed calls from the police. And I start going into a panic. I'm like, what the fuck? What is going on? Has someone broken into my house? Then I go into a panic. I call my partner and I say, I think someone's broken into my house. The police are there. I then go home and I'm panicking. I don't know whether the police are still there. Don't know whether there's anyone in my house. I call ADT security. I'm like, can you please just stay with me on the phone while I go into my house? I don't actually know what's going on here. Walk in, everything seems okay. Again, I'm messaging my partner saying, she's like, oh, the cop's still there. And I was like, the cops aren't here, don't know where they are, I really don't know what's going on. I was begging for her to come home, where I'd hoped that she would have come home in that situation, and she didn't. She still decided to stay at her friend's. She didn't come home to check on me to see if I was okay. Fast forward a week later, and she ended up telling me that she thought that I made the whole thing up. And she thought that I was trying to manipulate her into coming home, when in reality I don't have the creative prowess to make these things up. So that obviously hurt a lot, because again, I really needed her, she wasn't there. So then I messaged her and I said, I hope you know that I'm not sleeping alone tonight either. And so I'd sent that message, and obviously if you read that, you would interpret that as, oh, like I'm planning on cheating on her. Now, I had no intentions of cheating, I just wanted to threaten that because she was staying with a friend, so I was like, well, if you're going to do that, then I'm going to go find someone. But in reality, I was sleeping with my cat, that's what I meant. So then the whole Friday, she doesn't message me, doesn't talk to me. Then the Saturday, it's Valentine's Day. I say, happy Valentine's Day, I love you no matter what. I'm so sorry for everything. Can I please see you later? And she said, maybe not today, maybe tomorrow. And I'm like, I'm not sure what's worse, being single on Valentine's Day or being in a relationship with someone that doesn't even want to see you on Valentine's Day. What a stupid Hallmark holiday anyway, but that's beside the point. And so I was extremely hurt by that. I felt rejected. Here I am trying. I'm on my last limbs in essence. And yeah, she didn't want to see me. And I remember that night we were texting and she said, I'll see you tomorrow. And I sent a message saying, if I make it until then. And I can't remember what she said back, but then I was hoping surely with a message like that, she'll come home and she'll check on me. She didn't. So the next day I go to coaching and I leave a note on my bed thinking that she'll come check on me because I didn't send her any other message after that, turn my phone off, hoping that she would be concerned enough about my well-being to come home and check on me. Again, these are very manipulative behaviours and I fully acknowledge that. And so the note on the bed said, I'm too hurt by your absence, I'm too far gone. I then come home from coaching and her car's not in the driveway, so I'm thinking, cool, she hasn't even come home, she hasn't messaged me to check in with me, she doesn't care. So then I'm like, you know what, I just need to get out of this house because it's just a constant reminder of the fact that she's not here. I then drive to McDonald's and I write this letter. I write this letter to her and I basically say, imagine the couple that we'll be if we can get through this. I know that I'm really struggling right now, I know that I'm really difficult to be with, but please don't give up on us. I really think that we will, we'll grow so much individually and together if we can get through this. So I basically poured everything that I had left into this letter. I then went back to the house and I contacted her and I said, hey Catherine, where are you? And I got no response. Tried calling her, no answer. I then messaged her friend that I thought that she'd be with and I said, hey, do you know where Catherine is? I really need to see her, it's really important, my life depends on it. I sent that to Catherine as well, Catherine didn't respond. And then I see that her friend is online on Facebook. And so I took that as, they're seeing these messages and they're ignoring me. I snapped in that moment and I perceived that as complete rejection. And I wrote on the note and I said, but you ended me, left that on the bed, turned my phone off, and then at that point I was like, I can't deal with this pain anymore, I just need to end everything, this is too much to deal with. And for the next probably hour, 2 hours, that's all I wanted to do was just end my life. I was like, I literally cannot handle this pain. And that's, I guess, the paradox of suicide is that your brain gets to a point where it says that the only way to end this pain is to end your life, which goes against every natural instinct that you have, which is to survive. I somehow managed to, ironically, the thought that actually kept me alive and kept me from ending everything was, imagine your parents getting that phone call. Imagine your parents getting that phone call that their only daughter that lives in another country has taken her life. And so that was the only thing that kept me going. I then got to a friend's house and she was high off her mind, so I'm not sure actually how much benefit she had. I then drove to my teammate's house on campus. She wasn't there, so I climbed through the window, left her a note because I didn't have my phone. and then drove to my doctor's house, my doctor that did both my ACLs. And I remember showing up at her house and I had a hoodie on. It was like 12 o'clock at night, and she was like, "Oh my God, we were so worried about you." And I was like, "We? Like what?" And so all of a sudden in that moment, I was brought back to reality, and I wasn't in that fight or flight survival mode. It was like, oh, right, yeah, people would be concerned. So I stayed the night at hers, didn't have my phone, didn't have anything. The next day I go home, I meet my partner and my friend, and they walked into a note that was left on the bed with my phone. So for them, that no doubt was traumatizing. They were calling the cops, they were calling to see if there were any accidents on the road, to see if anything had happened. And again, I can't imagine what I put them through. But I got home and I was kind of like, "Why are you guys so sad? Like, I'm still here, what's going on?" And that's because when you get into a really dark headspace, your body doesn't like you being in that uncomfortable place of mind. So it's going to do the opposite to get you back to homeostasis. So it compensates by making you happy, lighthearted. It's why, when you get scared in a movie and then start laughing afterwards. That's your body's way of trying to adjust to the fact that you've had something significant happen to you and you're trying to make light of it to bring you back to normality. So that was February 15th, where I just wanted to end everything. And at the time I was on medication. I was seeing a therapist, and after that I then changed therapists. I then started doing group therapy. So once a week I was seeing a therapist, and then once a week I was attending group therapy with other people. And it wasn't probably until my partner ended up leaving me maybe 2 weeks later, and it was probably another 2 weeks after that things started to actually get better. Because during that time, I was just trying to get better for her. I was trying to get better so that our relationship could work out, and it wasn't until she said, we're done sort of thing, that I then could focus on getting myself healthy for me. And I guess a key point with that is that you can't get better in an environment that made you sick. And that environment was toxic. Not because she was toxic, but because she couldn't be there for herself, and I couldn't be there for her or for myself. So she can't be there for herself, she's definitely not going to be there for me, because she couldn't. She was still processing the loss of her mum. And I guess the really fucked up thing was that her mum had blamed dying on her. And then all of a sudden she's in a relationship with someone who's in essence blamed suicide on her. And that's something that I spent significant time having to forgive myself for, because I knew that would have reopened all of those wounds. But I was sick at the time, and I was in a very unhealthy state of mind. And she also, I don't have any animosity towards her, because she did what she had, she did all that she could do at the time. And at the end of the day, when your needs aren't being met, that's when you're going to act out. That's when things sort of start becoming toxic. And that's what the relationship was. I had no other reinforcements from any other aspect of my life, and I was expecting my partner to supply all of those, which isn't healthy, and I fully acknowledge that. And see if there's anything else on that. So I guess on that, the question is, what actually helps me get better? So I touched on the fact that her leaving was probably one of the best things that could have happened, because I started to focus on myself. Therapy, I personally never benefited, I don't think, from individual therapy, but it was the group therapy that really helped. It was sitting with other people that were struggling, that were doing similar things in regards to self-harming, because you were all of a sudden then being held accountable, that you had to report to anyone else in there that, if you had self-harmed, you'd have to tell them, hey, I've self-harmed, and you didn't want to let them down, in a way. And we also, the bonds that we then formed, we'd catch up outside of therapy, and we would go out for coffee, and all of a sudden you've got those social connections. And for anyone who's familiar with Johann Hari, he does a fantastic TED talk on everything we think we know about addiction is wrong. And he said that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. And so to me, what I needed was connection. I wasn't getting that connection from my partner, you know, my needs weren't getting met. I didn't have it from my friends because my friends that I'd reached out to, they weren't there. I did have two fantastic people in my life. So my professor, to this day, I still said to her, you know, like, she helped to save my life. And my friend, significantly. And the reason that she helped is because she just kept showing up at the end of the day. And that's sort of a massive key takeaway that I have, is that even if you don't know what to do, the most important thing that you can do is to just show up, to be there. You know, if you are genuinely concerned about someone, actually go to their house and show them that you care. You know, don't just say, oh, I'm here if you need anything. Because that is it's a very passive approach. And I think that in society, yes, it's absolutely well-intentioned, but people don't judge you on your intentions, they judge you on your behaviours. And when you say to someone, hey, I know you're struggling, but I'm here if you need anything, that's basically saying, hey, I know that you're hurting, but I don't want to step outside of my little comfortable space and step into your space and actually ask you, hey, what's going on here? And so that's where all this sort of leads to, is to the training that I'm doing. So basically, the whole point that I should have sort of shared that story is because I reached out for help. You know, I communicated to people that I wasn't doing well. Granted, I never told people explicitly, hey, I'm suicidal, because I didn't necessarily have those rational thoughts or irrational thoughts. I wasn't like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. It was more, I got to the point of a heightened emotional state where that seemed like the only logical option for me at that time. I reached out for help, but people didn't know how to respond. And I think that in society we focus so much on the individual and building their resilience, you know, equipping them with skills to process whatever it is that they're going through. And it doesn't matter what skills I possessed, I was still going to be struggling with what I was going through, because at the end of the day, my needs weren't being met. I, you know, couldn't exercise, wasn't getting those endorphin release. It doesn't matter how many times I meditated during a day, you know, that was never going to actually help me with what I was going through. I needed people around me that were there for me, that knew how to respond to me. And the truth is that we don't know how to respond to people when they're struggling, because we're not equipped with those skills. When do we ever learn that in school? We don't. You know, there's you go into a bookstore and there's an entire section devoted to self-help, but where's the section on helping others? You know, there isn't one. When, again, I think that we focus so much on the individual and telling the individual, hey, you've got a problem, then you need to learn how to deal with it. Or what if instead we worked on ourselves and we worked on creating an environment in which people felt safe to talk about their problems, and we then were equipped with skills to actually process whatever it is that they're telling us. People aren't wanting you to fix or solve their problems. You know, that's the first thing that you get told sort of as a psychologist or in any of that, is that you're not there to fix or solve. And we sort of have that common misconception of, oh, well, I got to fix their problem. No, you don't. That's their problem. It's their life. And you trying to fix their problem actually takes away from their empowerment of getting through whatever it is that they're struggling with. And so what I'm trying to do is to train individuals to have these conversations. Because again, I always thought that the way that we thought about mental health is we're focusing on the wrong side of the equation. You know, we're focusing on the individual, and it's up to the individual to talk about their problems. But I talked about my problems. I told people I wasn't doing well, and guess what? People didn't know how to respond. Is that on me, or is that on the people around me? This isn't me trying to blame anyone around me. You know, you don't know what you don't know. They didn't have the skills. So why don't they have the skills? Why are we not doing more in society? Why are we not teaching these skills in school? Or why are we not making mandatory for any sort of organisation to have these skills? And growing up, I always thought that I always had people that sort of felt comfortable opening up and telling me what they were going through. And I never thought, oh wow, it's because I possess this amazing ability to talk to people. Because people are like, oh, I've never told anyone this before. And my simple response back is, has anyone ever asked you this question? And they said, well, no. And I said, well, no shit. No shit, you're not going to tell someone this when they haven't taken the interest to get to know what it is that you're going through. Because most people, they don't want to be uncomfortable. They sit in their little circle and they stay here because they don't want to be nosy, or they don't want to put themselves in a situation where they don't know how to respond. Guess what? I don't know how to respond 99% of the time either. But I sit with them in that space, and I be uncomfortable with them. I might acknowledge and say, look, I really don't know what to say right now. Or at the very least, I'll just validate whatever it is that they're feeling, because everyone's feelings are valid purely for the fact that they're feeling them. So that's why I've designed these training courses. So I've got 2 training courses. There's a module 1 and there's a module 2. Module 1 basically equips individuals with the skills of how to support people when they're just struggling. So everyday people, friends, family, whatever, things to do and things to avoid. And then module 2 builds on what you learn in module 1, and it's more mental health specific. How do you respond to someone who is suicidal? What signs do you need to look for when someone is suicidal? How do you respond to someone that's got an eating disorder? How do you respond to someone that's self-harming? You know, what are things that you can do to actually assist this individual? And so that's what I'm doing based on, I guess, my experiences. Because again, I don't think that we need to leave it up to the individuals. I think that we need to actually start helping others be more comfortable and supporting them. And there's a very good experiment. There was a post that I think went viral on Facebook or whatever. It was the balloon experiment. And this sort of epitomizes the way that we operate in society. You know, everything is all very individualistic, and it's all about, oh, well, you need to do what you need to do to succeed. And it's like, well, what if we actually helped other people succeed? What if we actually helped people with what they're struggling with? So in this experiment, the teacher asked all these kids to blow up a balloon, write their name on the balloon. Then they throw the balloons in the hallway. The teacher messes up the balloon and says, all right, you've got 5 minutes to go find your name on the balloon. So for 5 minutes, they're all looking for their name and they can't find it. So after 5 minutes, hardly anyone has their name on their balloon. Then the teacher says, okay, so what if as soon as you pick up the first balloon, you then take that balloon to the person whose name is on it. Within 2 minutes, every single person had their balloon with their name on it. Why? Because every single person helped everyone else in that room. It was now like it's such a simple concept, but it's so powerful. And in essence, that's what this training is it's not about focusing on the individual, but focusing on creating an environment in which people feel safe to talk about their problems. Because I guess from my perspective, there's only so many people that I can talk to, that I can help. But if I can train other adults to have these conversations, then all of a sudden me helping 10 people then becomes helping 50 people, because you've got, say, you train 5 people to help 10 people, and you know, you teach a man, or you catch a fish for a man and he eats for a day. You teach a man how to fish and he eats for the rest of his life, you know. And even if there's only one thing that people take from the training, I think that is invaluable, and that inadvertently helps me, you know, inadvertently takes that pressure off of, well, not pressure, but I guess having people feel like they don't have anyone else to talk to. I don't think there's anything else that I have to say. So I guess, I can't remember if I mentioned this before, but it's not, we always hear that communication is key. But I think the key point is that it's not communication, it's comprehension. Because I can sit here all day long and I can tell you everything that's wrong with me. But at the end of the day, if you don't know how to respond to me, that's going to determine whether or not I feel better or whether I feel worse. So that's sort of what I'm doing with the training. There are training sign-up sheets out the back. There's 4 different dates for Module 1, 4 different dates for Module 2. Some are at Salisbury, some are ones at Cove Civic Centre, so down south for those southerners that drove all the way up here, so thank you for that. And one is probably going to be central. So if you are interested, please sign up. It will be a 5-person minimum, just so that then, you know, we're sort of maximising everyone's time. And I guess the only other thing is I don't want to, or I guess I'm not sort of here to individually mentor and do one-on-one sessions. That's not sort of what my intention is here. My intention is to train adults to have those conversations so that they then can have these conversations. And that's sort of a vision that I've had with Salisbury, is creating a mentoring program that if people complete these training programs, then maybe someone who's struggling can reach out to one of those people that have been through this. And it's not something that I'm like, yep, cool, you finished the training program, you're on your own, I don't want to have anything to do with you. There will be a support network, so there'll be either a group chat on Messenger or whatever's the easiest way to communicate, where if you've got a situation that comes up, you can post it in the group, and all of a sudden there's 20 to 30 people thinking and problem solving with you. It's not just, hey, you reach out to me, hey Nicole, how'd you respond in this situation? Because again, there's only so many people that I can help, but together we can help a lot more people. And that's sort of my vision, long-term vision, is to create an online program where people can be like, find a mentor in the same way that they find a psychologist. So they might be able to look up, oh hey, this person has been through X, Y, Z in their life, I want to speak to that person. But that's, yeah, a long-term vision. So that's pretty much all that I have to say. Questions? Are there any like group questions or anything? Or if there's anything that people want to say? No, good chat. Yes?
What are the police called for?
What were the police called for?
Yeah, because you said like the security company and the police called.
So the alarm at the house went off, and because I didn't respond to them, basically then the police were called. So I guess the same thing happens here, that if an alarm goes off and no one responds to that, then they send the police because it could be a break-in. So, but don't think anyone broke it.
It's a cat.
Essentially, the cat has a cat more, so no help, but. Anything else? Any other questions? We're all good. Bianca?
I think it's not really a question, but I think it's just important to sort of point out, I'm sure everyone in this room may know someone else in their life that could benefit from the training, and Nicole's not talking to everyone to get you to buy you and come to her training. You don't have to take that next step, but it's just that understanding of what she's offering. But also, if you know other people that might benefit from them, talk to them, tell them what you've heard tonight, maybe in a bit of a briefer chat, in a quick 5 minutes, and your mum might be interested, or you might have other people in your life that could benefit from the training. She's giving up her time and doing it for free, so you guys can spread the word as well.
Thanks, Pete. Do you want to be my personal assistant? Is that there's also QR codes on the wall if you'd rather sign up electronically. Thanks to Jazz. Anything else? Any other questions, comments, concerns? No, we're good. Well, thank you again, everyone, for coming. There was